Our Pittsburgh Steelers are up in Latrobe at St. Vincent's College for the 57th year. The chief, the founder of the Steelers in 1933, Art Rooney Sr., he always liked that the Steelers traveled 35 miles east of Pittsburgh to go to St. Vincent's, the home of the largest Benedictine monastery in the world. There's 160 Benedictines there. Art Rooney knew that the Pittsburgh Steelers would not only be fed well by the Benedictine sisters, brothers, and priests, that they would be well fortified physically on the gridiron, but also that they would be fed spiritually by ascending to the mountain there in Latrobe. There is a wise man, don't you think? For the next 5 weeks, Sundays, we're going to read from John chapter 6, the Eucharistic chapter, God bless you, on the Bread of Life discourse, and a very intensive meditation on the Eucharist. Jesus with the vast crowd, he ascends the mountain, he opens the Word of God and feeds their souls with the life-giving bread of the living Word of God. And then he gives them his body and blood to give them strength so they don't collapse in the world through sin. We see this echoed in the book of Exodus, chapter 16, when Moses provides manna and quail for the Israelite people on their long journey to fortify and give them strength. We see this today in Elijah and Elisha and the multiplication of the barley loaves. We see it in the gospel that Jesus strengthens the faith of his apostles in the early church by giving them the gift of all gifts, the Eucharist, the sacrament of all sacraments, the sacrament of the Eucharist. Maybe we take it for granted as Catholics. It's fundamental to our faith, the Mass, the Eucharist. There, a young lad has 5 loaves and 2 fish in the crowd. 5 loaves, the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch. 2 loaves, 2 testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Here are wedded together. He says, I can help. But notice the disciples become incredulous and doubt and say to the Master, what good is that for so many? They were so fixated on the enormity of the crowd and the scarcity of their resources that Jesus reorients his disciples away from the inscrutable problem of scarcity and says, give thanks to God that God will provide what we can't provide. We all need fed. There's a God hunger in each one of us. That's why we come together at the Mass as a community of believers to break the bread. That Jesus multiplies the loaves and the fishes in our everyday lives miraculously to feed our world. The multiplication of the loaves and fishes is a transition from multiplying people to multiplying disciples. That's evangelization explosion. Not a population explosion, an evangelization explosion, where the Spirit explodes from the littleness of our lives to a commitment to bringing the gospel to every person we meet. Recently, last week in our nation, our 10th National Eucharistic Congress, over 60,000 people came strong to hear the Word of God and to celebrate the Eucharist and to send them out as missionary Eucharistic disciples. That the heart of the mystery of being a Catholic is the Mass, celebrating the Eucharist. It's the supreme source of grace for what we need on the journey, no matter whatever age you live. Whether it's the 1st century, the 17th century, the 21st century, or the 30th century that is yet to come. Jesus took bread. He blessed the bread. He gave thanks to his Father. He broke the bread and gave it to them. And he says, in effect, take, bless, break, and give your life for others. Be a Eucharistic disciple, one who gives for others what the Lord has given to us. Paul reminds us it's one Lord and one faith and one baptism and one God and one Father of us all that unites us today to worship. Don't forget it. And there's a rippling effect of charity. If we offer but a little, God will make up for what is lacking. With God, nothing is ever wasted. Our smallest efforts, our prayers, our works, our sufferings, united to Christ's sacrifice, are transformed and transubstantiated into the very body and the blood of Christ. It is the hand of the Lord that feeds our souls. It is the mountain that we climb to listen to the Word of God. We are called and sent because of having been fed at this table. God recreates this crowd of all ages, different talents and abilities and backgrounds to be a community of generosity, a community of charitable giving, a community of compassion for one another. As Mother Teresa of Calcutta said it best, we must love one another, one Jesus at a time, one person at a time. We must commend them to the hand of the Lord. In the words of the author and evangelist from Australia that we're all familiar with, Matthew Kelly, in his beautiful recent book, The Beautiful Eucharist, he says, encountering Jesus in the Eucharist should be like touching heaven. That should change the way we live on earth each and